Hey, what is happening, guys? What's going on YouTube? Thank you for tuning into Rules for Rebels. Today, I wanted to talk about what potentially could be a risk to your e-commerce store, your Shopify store, your dropshipping store. We're going to be talking about Shopify and Squarespace and doing the AliExpress dropshipping method and how you got to be careful with your processing as well as what you sell because your store could be shut down. That's what happened to this gentleman on the Shopify subreddit. I saw this post the other day and he just simply titled it, "What the actual fuck?" And he posts something that Shopify Payments had sent him, which during a standard review of your Shopify Payments account, your business has been identified as presenting a level of risk for customer disputes that we will be unable to support with Shopify Payments. And they don't give a lot of details. He's apparently contacted support. They haven't been too forthcoming with why they shut down his store. He did drop a link to it. And we'll take a look at it in a second. I'll show you guys why they shut down his store. But I wanted to talk about a bigger issue, which is payment processing and how if you have issues with your payment processing, it could literally destroy your business. I talk a lot about high-risk merchant processing and merchant accounts on this channel because it's something that my business has faced a lot. So one thing to be aware of, things like Shopify Payments, which is actually run by Stripe, as well as PayPal, they're not true merchant accounts. They're what are called third-party aggregators. So you're bundled on a merchant account with hundreds and possibly even thousands of other people. And because of that, they tend to be more strict. You're generally not getting the best rates that you can have. You really want to keep a couple backup processors. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. There's a company I use called Charge.com. I'll link to them in the description box below. It is a true merchant processor. You have a real merchant processing account. You're not just bundled with other people. And also they handle high-risk businesses. So let's hop over here and take a look at his store. Now, everybody in the comment section down here is like speculating, like maybe it's because you're selling weed hoodies. Maybe, you know, everyone's speculating about why he got shut down. If we go over and look at his store right here off the bat, he's selling phone cases that have the Backwoods logo. I mean, basically, he just stole this image right off a pack of Backwoods. Backwoods are cigars that people split open and put weed in and smoke blunts with, for anybody who doesn't know. But right off the bat, he does not have the rights, I'm assuming, to be using Backwoods trademarked logos and artwork. And if we go down here, he's also got like Captain Chronic and Campbell's Soup. I think the biggest issue is using Backwoods logo. And what's kind of surprising is this might be why Shopify Payments shut him down. Potentially, if they got a DCIM takedown, if Backwoods were to contact Shopify and be like, hey, this store is using our trademarked logos, potentially Shopify would take down his entire store. But at this point, they're just cutting off his payment processing. And fortunately, the one good thing about Shopify is if you're using Shopify Payments, Shopify has access to all different merchant processors and all different gateways. So you can take like PayPal, you can cook up your own merchant and processing account. I think you might be able to do Square. There's all different payment gateways and all different payment processors. One of the downsides of using Squarespace, and I was recently looking into Squarespace, Squarespace only allows you to use one merchant processor and it's Stripe. So you're not even allowed to get your own merchant account. Think about this. What if this guy were running his store on Squarespace and Stripe shut him down? Well, basically he has to leave Squarespace at this point because they don't allow other payment processors. Because he's using Shopify, at least he'll be able to hook up a different payment processor, although I think this might be an issue that he's going to continue running into if he's using people's logos and likenesses. So this Captain Crunch, this may be different enough from the real Captain Crunch to be considered parody. This Campbell's Soup might take issue with this. I don't think he's allowed to use this Pikachu or whatever it is. But some of the other products he sells are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. If we go up here to products and look at full prints, he's basically drop shipping from AliExpress. Here's a girl smoking marijuana, $39.99. He buys it off AliExpress for $19.55. He's got the purple and green weed leaf hoodies. I think we got those here, $20 and $19.99. So he's basically making 50% margins on those. So these products I think are fine. The bigger issue is his Backwoods stuff. Again, you know, unless he has permission from Backwoods or unless he's paying for the rights to use their images and artwork, he's not allowed to do this. And he's going to continuously have problems with merchant processors. So let's talk a little bit about merchant processing. So a lot of you guys have kind of heard my backstory. I started my business in 2012. I started taking PayPal. From 2012 to 2015, I took PayPal. Our business grew from like nothing, making like $50 a month, to a point where we were doing over $250,000 per sales per month. Now, PayPal was actually giving us discounts on our processing, whereas most people are paying 2.9%. They were only charging us 1.9%. We had our own PayPal account rep who we would have monthly meetings with, and she knew exactly what we were selling, exactly what we were doing. We were selling a legal product. Everything was good. Well, one particular month we did $250,000 in sales, which is a huge month. That was more than we normally did. And for anybody thinking we were getting rich off it, back at the time, the margins weren't very good. So we were making maybe 10 or 20 grand a month off of that. If we were doing that today with the margins we have today, I mean, we probably would have made, $80,000 in a single month. But the margins weren't as good back then as they are now. Anyhow, basically that automatically triggers a rolling reserve with PayPal. So we got a call from our account rep. She's like, look, you guys are doing so much volume. What we're going to need to do if you want to keep processing with us, we're going to take 10 grand right off the top of your account and keep it in kind of a security fund. We're also going to take 20% of everything you sell. So what that means is if I sell a product for $1,000, PayPal is going to hold $200 back. Now they do this for 90 days. So if we're only making 10% margins, over the course of this 90 days, the more we sell, we're falling 10% in the hole every single time. Now, after 90 days, we get back, on a 91st day, we get back the money they took day one. On a 92nd day, they give back the money they took day two. So we will get that money back, but it definitely hamstrings your business, and it means that you don't have money to order inventory and things like that. So at one point, we had $150,000 tied up in PayPal rolling reserves. We wound up having to raise our prices. It hurt business a little bit, but we were able to keep going on. But even that wasn't enough. Fortunately, we had some understanding suppliers who fronted us some inventory because they knew our situation. We've been dealing with them for a while. So we wound up, sustaining the situation, and our business was able to keep going. And then eventually one day we got an email, Risk and Compliance wants to have a call with you and your rep. So it was set about a week out. We were really nervous about it. As soon as we get on the phone right off the bat, they're like, we're not comfortable with your volume. We're shutting you down. Now, I don't think it had to do with our volume. We're in kind of a gray area business. Everything's completely legal, but we're in an area that a lot of processors consider high risk. Now, for anybody who wondering, like, why do processors care? Here's how it works. So let's say potentially you sell $100,000 worth of products on your store. You never ship them out to the customers. 2-3 weeks later, customers start complaining to you. You don't respond to them because you're a scammer and you ran off with their money. They're going to do chargebacks with their credit card companies. The credit card companies are going to take this $100,000 back from PayPal. You have the money, the customers have their money, or you have your money, the customers have their money back, and PayPal's left holding the bag owing $100,000. So for anybody who's like, oh, PayPal and all these guys are, scammers and rip-off artists, I just want you guys to understand why they do this, because everything you process, there's a risk of them getting stuck holding the bag with that. So that's kind of the reason for that. Another reason for high-risk processing is like reputational harm. Recently Backpages got shut down, but a couple years ago, Tom Dart, the Cook County Sheriff, really pressured Visa and MasterCard, like, hey, why would you guys process credit cards for a prostitution site, blah, blah, blah. It basically makes them look bad. So Visa, MasterCard, the parent processing bank, they don't want to be associated with like shady industries and things like that. They don't want to be associated with somebody who's violating trademark laws. So if there's anything kind of shady about your business or anything even like questionable or gray area, they're going to shut you down as well. So what does all this mean? Ultimately, you want to be using a real merchant account. And I also think it's smart to have several merchant accounts. So if anything happens to one, you have a couple backups. Back when PayPal shut me down, we were without payment processing for 2 or 3 months. I called over 300 payment processors. I couldn't get processing. I eventually wound up using Shopify payments just because it's easy to get set up and I knew I could get away with it for a while. Used them for about 6 months. They shut me down. Then I started using QuickBooks processing because that's another easy setup as well. But again, it's not a true merchant account. They wound up shutting me down as well. I finally found 2 high-risk processors. One wanted to charge me 14%. That was just way too much. I wound up finding another one who charges me about 6%. One other thing to be aware of with Shopify, if you don't use Shopify payments, they charge you 0.25% on every sale just for using their platform. So even though they're not really doing anything for you, just like Amazon and eBay, they're charging you 1%. So that is one of the advantages of using Shopify payments. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, if I couldn't use Shopify payments, I wouldn't use Shopify because I'm not going to let them, take more money from me. If you buy a higher tiered Shopify plan, that's what me and my business partner wound up doing. You can actually get Shopify's fee down to 0.1%. But nonetheless, I will admit it does suck having them take a fee for doing basically absolutely nothing. I mean, that's the whole reason for setting up your own e-commerce store is to get away with the selling fees that, platforms like eBay and Amazon charge you. But, what are you going to do? I like the Shopify platform. Even if they're charging me an extra 0.1%, I'll just deal with it. So I have a high-risk processing account. I actually have several of them. And for any of you guys who are thinking like only like weed stuff or only like trademark violation stuff is high risk, think again. Back when I was selling hoverboards, processors didn't want to let us process payments for hoverboards, and we weren't even selling the actual parts. We weren't even selling the actual boards using credit cards. We were actually selling the boards cash only, but we were selling hoverboard parts. But simply because the word hoverboard was associated with our site, Shopify payments wouldn't deal with us, and a lot of other processors wouldn't deal with us either. So, if you're using sites like or platforms like Stripe or PayPal, yeah, it's super easy to get set up. However, you are putting yourself at risk. They're much more likely to hold your money, freeze your money, shut your account down, put a rolling reserve on you. What you really want to do is get a what's called a high-risk merchant processing account if you fall into an area that's high risk. And even if you don't fall into a high-risk category, I always think it's smart to keep 2 or 3 merchant processors on at a time. That way, if you have issues with one, your business doesn't come to a screeching halt while you're trying to figure out how to get things back on track. If you have a problem with one, you just turn on the other one. If you're taking Stripe, PayPal, and you have your own merchant processing account, if PayPal gives you any trouble, you still got 2 others. If PayPal and Stripe give you trouble, you still got your own merchant account. So there's a company that I've been working with for a while. They're called Charge.com. I'll link to them in the description box below. I use them for a couple of my stores. They're really pretty quick and easy to get set up. Because my business is high risk, with some other processes I've used, they need to send somebody out to my office to take pictures of my office and pictures of my inventory, and it's like a really, really in-depth process. Charge.com has always managed to set me up pretty easy. If your PayPal account's suspended, you can still use them to continue selling on eBay. They're pretty reasonable price-wise. They tend not to do rolling reserves. They're a domestic processor, so it's not an offshore one. And they've really been pretty good and pretty friendly to me. So I will drop their link in the description box below. And that brings me to one more thing I wanted to talk about, which is offshore processing. So if your business is like really, really high risk, if you're selling bongs or something like that, you're probably only going to be able to get processing with an offshore processor. Now, when it comes to high-risk processing, for every one good company out there, there's probably 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 bad ones. I got scammed out of several $1,000s by a couple processors. I knew a couple other people who had $70,000, $100,000, $150,000 stolen from them. What winds up happening is they'll let you process payments, and they'll keep back a 10 or 20% rolling reserve. But then eventually one day when you're due to get that $50,000 in the rolling reserve back, they run off with your money and you never hear from them again. So be very, very careful with high risk processing. Another I guess negative or challenge of using offshore processing is because the payment isn't a domestic payment, almost all your customers' credit cards are going to be declined. If you guys have ever tried to make a payment from like a payment on a site like say AliExpress, and your credit card gets declined, you have to call up and be like, hey, it is John, I am making this payment, it's not credit card fraud, and they'll let it go through. But when you're using an offshore processor, you're using a bank in Hong Kong or Japan or England or whatever, wherever else, and every payment you take is probably going to be declined by your customer's card, and then also they're going to be subject to an additional 1% fee for an international transaction. And really, it's just kind of a big headache. So if at all possible, you want to try to find a high-risk merchant processor who is domestic or in the USA. You really, really don't want to go offshore. Not only is it incredibly inconvenient, but most of the high-risk processors out there are scams. So, I just thought I'd bring this to your guys' attention. I know a lot of people are doing Shopify dropshipping stores, Shopify AliExpress dropshipping stores, which is fine. And really, at the end of the day, there's probably not any issue with selling weed shirts like this. But when you start using trademarked logos and things like that, that's where you're going to run into problems. So, I just wanted to make this video, kind of bring this to your guys' attention. I know a lot of people are starting Shopify stores, and this guy was understandably upset or frustrated. I imagine he's probably been getting a few sales, so he put in all this work setting up a Shopify store. He's got a few sales rolling in, and then all of a sudden they shut down his payment processing, and he can't make any more money, and people are trying to order, but they can't order. Huge headache. So my tips to kind of stay away from these situations is, first off, don't use people's logos. Don't use trademarked logos that you don't have the right to use. If you're selling a product that you think could be considered high risk, go out and get yourself a high risk processor. Don't rely on Shopify payments or Stripe. And if any of you guys want to know what businesses are considered high risk, just Google the word like either PayPal or Stripe and high risk and or prohibited businesses, and they'll have a list of all different types of businesses that they're not willing to accept payments for. But yeah, this can be very frustrating and very detrimental to a business. So make sure you're keeping a couple processors on deck. And like I said, I will link to charge.com in the description box below. It is an affiliate link, so if you guys do use them, I will get a little kickback. But you know, I personally use them. They've never stolen money from me. They're onshore. Customer service has been great. And I was actually talking to, I think his name's Dan. There's two brothers who own the company, and I was going to try to get him on the channel. He said he'd come on for an interview, and we just talk a little bit about the high risk processing space. So I was just talking to him a couple weeks ago, so it's kind of interesting to see this post. But yeah, a lot of people don't have experience with high risk processing, don't know why their stores are shut down. So I just wanted to make a video kind of shedding some light on this topic. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. And if you guys have ever had stores shut down, or if you're considered a high risk merchant and have any tips to share or anything like that, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you on the next video.